Hey guys, so welcome to another speed redesign process, and this is how my Medium homepage looks like currently. And before I do the redesign, I need to recreate some of the elements on the page first, so let's do that. And before we start, all of the techniques that you're gonna see here are outlined in more detail in the book, so if you don't have it yet, you can still get it, and you can still get the 50 free pages by just subscribing on the website. Okay, so here we are at a very sloppy representation of the Medium homepage, but it's kind of purposefully so because I want to modify a lot of it, so I didn't really want to make it too precise because it doesn't matter. We're gonna change it anyway. So the icons are a little bit different, and I used the old Medium logo because I think that it's a lot better. So let's start. And I think that the main problem that I see here is not the right use of space, because it's assuming that you're following a lot more topics than you usually are. So there's a lot of useless space here. And also, the latest from following doesn't really make a lot of sense because you need to be like a super fan of somebody, and obviously I love everybody here, but it's not really an incentive enough to go click there if you just see a number. So it's actually best if you tailored the main page to yourself. So here's what I would do. Okay, so I moved some of the sections out of the view completely to make it clearer. But one thing that I noticed here is that on the original Medium page, the plus button is not in the center of the actual button shape. So yeah, so like little things like that are really annoying. So I'm grouping everything I can and just moving it away, because we're gonna start with the header. So here is a big post, and let's move that away, and let's remove that line as well. And I'm gonna change the grid to something that I feel will work a little bit better here. So I really like the good morning feature or good evening or whatever. It kind of gives you that personal touch. So we're gonna leave that. Now let's make the Medium logo or word mark a little bit smaller here. And we can actually leave that little line here, but let's make it the same height as the logo, roughly. Okay, now we have these sections here. So first of all, we're using a lot thinner icons here, so let's change that to 1.5. And let's also modify the color to something a little bit lighter so they don't take as much space. Now, one thing that we can do here is to make it easier for us to align this, let's create circles, just like the main circle that we have here, and let's place them at 8 points from each other. And that way you'll know where to put the icons. And I want to make them a little bit smaller here as well. So that way each icon has its own space here. And we can use a very faint border here just to make it a little bit clearer that these are the main functions over here. Okay, let's group this and let's create some guides along the logo. And actually, let's see, it's currently at 37, so let's move everything 5 points up. Okay, so the logo is now at 32, which is a good place to start with a horizontal grid. Okay, and what we can do here as well is to modify those circles to be just as big as the logo, or to modify the logo to be a little bit smaller. So I'm just gonna choose this option. So going back here, making this smaller, and obviously this has to be smaller as well so it fits well. Okay, so we have a nice little header here. And I think that this header could actually be staying at the top of the page while you're scrolling, so you have quick access to the notifications, to search, or to going back to the home page. And the point for it is to have 32 times 3 in height, which is 96. And I almost made it right, so yeah, 96 it is. And I have a nice style over here that's gonna make it more visible. Okay, so this is our main starting point. So obviously doing changes like that and doing big redesigns requires some user research. And I'm gonna do user research right now, and I'm gonna do it on one person, me. Because obviously this is not like a real redesign based on tons of data. Albeit, I don't really know if they actually use tons of data, because it seems like almost everybody is complaining by the front page layout that it's confusing and it doesn't really give most people what they really want to see. So what I really want to see is actually stories from people or publications that I follow. So this. And we can actually leave that title because it makes a little bit of sense, and use that as well because we can create filters over here. So let's call this one first, the first one all, and let's use the new medium green for this button. Okay, and then we can actually start adding those things that we're following. So I'm following Fabrizio, and I think that in most cases doing just the first name if it's a person should be more than enough for most people to understand what you're looking for. And I'm also following the UX Collective. And let's add the startup here as well. And let's, now what we need is to indicate how many stories are unread by you at each given moment. So I'm gonna create a little bubble here that's gonna be 16 by 16. And let's say that all the stories, it's gonna be 16 stories. Actually, let's add another one. Let's add Hype 4 here as well.
And if you haven't, you can follow Hype 4 on Medium, obviously.
Okay, and then we can make those borders a little bit softer. We can actually use that little blue tinted part here and then just increase the brightness and then decrease saturation. That way it's gonna be not as visible and not as prominent, and we can do the same thing with the titles. Okay, so this is gonna be 16, so now we need to move this over here and invert it, so it's gonna have a green background and white font. And I understand why Medium chose this monochromatic way, because they need to embrace the minimalism and also make it easier to focus on the actual stories. But I don't think that having a little bit of color here is bad. It actually gives you incentive to be more interested in what you're doing. And now we have 10 stories, but it says 16, so we need to modify this a little bit. So we'll just have 8 over here, 4 over here, so it's gonna match up. Okay, now what we got to do is create some photos for all these people. And my point is to have it at 4 points from each side. And obviously they need to be a tiny bit rounded, just like that.
So I'm pasting in the photos to the masks and adding some little alignments to make it all work. And once this is complete, we can add the first story and start building our main interface. And I'm gonna start by playing around with the fonts a bit.
And this is a little bit weird because in the main story, it doesn't have a date currently. It just says read more and then the 4-minute read. So I think that we should go back to having the date here and skip the read more, because actually clicking anywhere on it will get you to read more. Okay, so this is one block. Then there's the subtitle and the main title. Okay, now how many elements should we show for each particular screen? Because that would suggest we could actually fit 3. And that is fine, but it's not really a lot. And if you want to see more of the stuff that you're actually interested in because you're following them, we can actually go with 3.5. So let's try it this way. Okay, and I'm gonna set the margin here at 32 because it's gonna be twice the margin from the top here. So it should give us clear hierarchy. So now let's paste in the articles, and we have 4 of them. But what we can do here is actually have a scrolling list of these articles and have one of them be a little bit larger horizontally. So that's like the first one that that you're currently reading. Okay, and let's change those photos here.
And I'm not gonna change the title, but let's modify the names at least.
And this is the first starting point. So let's assume that everybody wrote the exact same article and just used completely different images. So what we can do here is create an overlay that will be an option to move to the next article and to actually scroll these articles, and also a way to hide this overlap of the article here. And obviously when you start scrolling, you can actually have more content move to the other side, and the first one always kind of enlarge, so you see that's the main point of focus here. Or you can have the middle one enlarge, it's just completely up to you. Plus the arrow to scroll the other way could just appear over here. Okay, so we have a couple of sections here, and I think that to make it more interesting, you could have the latest from following as the main part, and then we'll have two columns, one for trending stories and the other one for all the other stories that are recommended to you based on what you've read before. So for now, I'm just gonna move everything into one column, and let's just keep it on the left side here. Okay, and let's add in those recommended stories. And first of all, I would move the images to the left side, and we can actually call this Explorer. But let's play around with this a little bit more. So first of all, I don't really like that line over here because I think that it creates a little bit of clutter. So I'm actually gonna add a background, a slightly gray background, but I'm gonna actually use our kind of saturated blue color and pick a background that's like even lighter. Okay, like this. And then we can remove the line. And we still have that clear division of the sections, but without this entire line over here. And we can actually remove those guides now. So let's take the content from this story and move it a little bit to the right. And this is gonna be a slightly wider and slightly taller image. Once we already have an established font sizes and styles for these things, I think it's really good to keep them exactly the same. Okay, so the main difference here would be that you don't have the subtitle in those recommendations. You only have the main title. Okay, and we have a little bit of space actually, because we can go up until this whole line, which is good. So maybe we can actually even have the subtitle for better clarity, because I think that those subtitles are actually pretty useful most of the time, because they give a little bit more context of what the article is all about. And we still have enough space to actually align it to the bottom of the image and play around with the alignment of all the other elements. So yeah, I'm not being too creative here, but that's not necessarily the point. And we're actually gonna put it at 32 as well. Okay, and so we're exploring our recommendations. Let's assume that this is me, and it's without a story. It's just my solo story. Okay, and let's of course replace those photos for something more relevant. Okay, perfect. So we now have the trending section, and for some reason it had an icon, but I don't think that, since like none of the other sections had icons next to them, I think the trending section could just have the title. And I think that this concept of having big numbers like this actually makes sense. So the main part of making it work would be to move this a little bit out and then synchronize the font sizes, because we really want to have that consistency. And same here. Okay, and now let's just align those blocks a little bit better. First of all, this kind of looks a little bit messy still. Just add a little bit of pretty random alignment here, because it doesn't really change as much. Okay, and as you can see that this section here doesn't have enough breathing room. So first of all, we can kind of make little boxes for each section, so we'll know how to better align them. And obviously a section can be a little bit taller when it has more text. So let's group this.
So just some quick alignments here.
And now when those are not necessary anymore, we can simply hide them. Okay, and what you can also play around is to maybe even have these sections on the background. It's all up to you. But I think that in general, if you hide the layout part, This is looking a little bit more tailored to the experience of what you want to read. And obviously you can just do some little pretty random fixes, because this is like a very quick exercise to see the thought process, to modify something that's been changed and something existing to actually match what you would expect from a platform like this. And since we already have those bubbles here, let's add a notification bubble. So yeah, this is like a very, very simple reimagine of Medium without really looking into the fine details of super nice fonts and super nice spacing. It's just more of what I think that would be beneficial for the platform to actually make it work a little bit better. But we can do one more thing here, because I really like adding one more thing at the very end of everything. So let's just paste in this, and let's just type in UX, and let's call this category like this. Now let's make this bold, and we need this little drop down arrow here like that. 1.5, because we actually had 1.5 before. Quickly switch the color to this. And yeah, I'm not gonna super precisely align everything here, because this is more of a general reimagine of the product than a proper UI redesign. So yeah, let's just group this and move it to the right side of our layout. So that way you'll be able to actually filter the categories. And I don't think that the topics you follow are that important, but if you really wanted to filter them, we can actually have them either in this dropdown or have a scrollable list like this on the side here. So we don't really need those anymore. But this is just my very quick reimagine of the Medium website. It's not really based on any research except for the stuff that I think that would be beneficial. But I think that it's, at least for me, it's a much more tailored experience. So let me know what you think. And if you liked the video, hit the like button and hit the subscribe. And see you next time. Cheers.